kind of the plan was today is just an informal conversation. Love to catch up with you guys and just have a chat. Like, we'll talk about the show, talk about some of the decisions and choices you guys made. By no means is this a heavy pro LiteGear thing. It's just about kind of just talking about the love of the show and what's going on.
Excellent.
So Ryan, tell me, this was your most recent collaboration with Mikey and Knight on this show. How did this particular project differ from your work with the two of them on both Glass and Split?
I think the biggest difference is that this was 95% a stage show. We did location work, maybe, there were, I think, 5 or 6 day episodes, and we'd do maybe 2 days on location per episode block. So they built this entire house on stage, and it, running water, running gas, you could fill bathtubs, you could flush toilets, you could live in the house. So, we were on stage, the entire time, whereas with Glass and Split, we did more location work, sort of 50-50. So that's just sort of the main difference. The work flow didn't change very much. It was the same approach throughout the shooting of the full show.
Yeah, it's cool. We're going to get into the set stuff, here a little bit deeper in our conversation, because the set was absolutely impressive. I mean, it's really one of it truly comes across in the series as almost a character in the entire show, because it really shows that you guys spent the majority of your time in there, and I think the house operated as really kind of a pivotal feature in this whole thing. From a tone perspective, looking back at both Glass and Split, and now into Servant, when you and Mike were talking about color temperatures and tonal things, how do you see them different, and how do they come across different on screen?
Well, the approach is always pretty much the same. Mike's not a big fan of strong color. He likes to keep things as naturalistic and real as possible. For the sodium night look, we use some gel, but that's really about it. He loves his tungsten lights. We do a lot of stuff with tungsten. Quarter O still. It's definitely an old way of doing things, but it works pretty well. So a lot of the color decisions, I think, sort of were just a choice that Mikey had, and it hasn't deviated a lot from what we've done. I think there are a couple of flashbacks we may have used a little bit more blue gel on some stuff just to give a different feel. But it was not a whole lot of difference in what we've done the last couple of movies. Dramatically, I think, it's still sort of trying to keep things lit naturally. Went a little bit darker for this one, I think, because it, wanted to have a feel of not quite a mystery feel, but a little more suspenseful than maybe some stuff we did in Glass or Split. Maybe more along the lines of Split, since it's a bit more suspenseful. But I think the idea was just to sort of, give the house, the apartment is definitely a character, like you were saying. So I think it was just to give it a little creepiness, but not go too far into sort of like horror.
Yeah,
I think.
Hey, there's Mike. Still no mic on him. Let's see.
No audio.
Oh, are you in? Okay, I can see him talking. That's a good sign. Let's see if I can get his mic on. Hold on. Mikey, we're getting there, buddy. Now we at least have you. Is there a space on your thing to unmute yourself? Because there you are.
Hey, yeah, it just came up. Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Dude, so good to have you, man. Thanks so much for joining us. Sorry about all the technical difficulties. I apologize to both you guys as panelists and to our attendees. This is our first one. Clearly, I'm doing this from my guest bedroom / home office. So, give us a little bit of leeway here. Like all things LiteGear, at times we can be a little down, a little dirty, but we love that. So, Mike, welcome. How are you?
I'm good. Good. Thank you. How are you guys?
We're doing really well, man. I mean, I think everybody, all things considered, seem to be hanging in there. What are you doing these days to keep yourself occupied?
Well, yeah, I had a baby about almost 2.5 months ago. So I mean, so that's most of my time. So I'm under
Yeah,
I'm under, like baby quarantine for past 2 months.
it's sort of like a forced paternity, right? You're taking forced
Yeah,
paternity leave.
yeah, exactly. I don't think I would be doing much anything different if it wasn't quarantine. So
No, these were great times. I mean, I've certainly been there and would have loved to have had 8 weeks off or something like that when Lucas was
yeah,
born. But
yeah,
good, well, good for you. So we were just while we were dealing with the technical difficulties, kind of Ryan and I got into a little bit. Just in the beginning, we showed the trailer and we started to talk about some of the differences in just overall tone between Servant and your prior collaborations with Knight. Looking back at both Glass and Split. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, did you and Knight look at this particular job differently than you looked at those two?
I mean, I guess yes and no. Obviously, yes, because it was my first collaboration that I had done with Knight that was outside of the Unbreakable universe trilogy. So that was kind of exciting as well to kind of step outside of to step outside of that story and do something new with him. But for the most part, it was very similar process to how Knight kind of runs his films. Obviously, there's guest directors coming in, so that's different. But he kind of set it up, I think, in a way that he kind of does with all his films. He's very much into storyboarding. All the episodes were tried to board out as much as possible. So yeah. So yeah, I think it was it was a really an amazing experience for me in that respect too, because it was kind of like going back to film school in many ways, since we're so kind of like contained and you're not every it's not like you're going to a different location every day. You get to focus really on less about the logistics of how are we going to getting everything up and running at the beginning of each day. It's pretty much everything's already kind of dialed in, and then you kind of focus on a little more of the telling the story with the camera, which I really enjoyed. So.
Yeah, and I think it really shows. I mean, Ryan, that's got to also be a lot more fun for you because as opposed to having to constantly be working with your rigging gaffer and be like just worrying about how you're going to get certain scenes lit. I mean, I'm sure allowed you to really focus on lighting and having a lot of fun playing with light.
Yeah, it did, because you're sort of like Mike was saying, you're free from the logistical stuff of going on location. Even though we still did that, when we would go on location, it was pretty dialed in, I think. So it was pretty easy, almost the same setup for Night stuff every time, little differences here and there. But yeah, it was nice to be able to just be on stage and really take our time looking at each shot and figuring out the approach. And we knew the general idea of how things would be lit, but it's nice to just sort of really go one shot at a time, piecing it together and not have to worry about like, oh, the condor is late, or any little things that happen that comes along with being on location.
Sure.
Yeah.
So
and it was kind of first thing, we kind of get to go back and revisit the same sets every day was kind of a new experience to that degree, because then we kind of get to tweak, try things out, and then we tweak things, and then we're always constantly trying to perfect or the same sets and with the lighting and stuff like that.
Yeah, I think it really showed too, like both with the lighting and even some of the production design as you get kind of deeper into the episodes, because you're in the house for so long. And it really, like I had said to Ryan earlier, it became such almost a character in the story. You can start to see subtle things change. There's a lamp on, or there's something different. It always seemed to sort of be in balance with the script or the specific mood at the moment. So tell me this, when you and Knight were sitting down and having the conversation about this project, what were some references that you guys looked to? Because for me, this definitely had almost like a Hitchcock-esque sort of, whodunit mystery feel to it. Whereas both Glass and Split, because they were in the Unbreakable world, almost had a bit of a almost superhero tone to a small degree. So like, what did you guys look at when you were kind of looking at what this whole thing was going to look like?
A few different things. I mean, yeah, obviously I think Hitchcock, Knight is a big Hitchcock fan, and I think, he's very much into this kind of same, very contained thrillers, psychological thrillers in contained spaces and stuff like that. So yeah, that was a big one. For me personally, the look-wise, Birth was always been a film that I've just been fascinated with the look of, and so I think this was my first time where I kind of felt like I could had the opportunity to kind of use that as a stronger reference than I have been. So try to that was a big one for me, for the palette and the kind of patina that Savvides kind of tried, that he did in that.
Yeah, I definitely, and you and I had talked a little bit yesterday, one of the things that I loved, and, my poor wife gets sick of me, like, dissecting shots when we're trying to watch something, but there are some just remarkably interesting camera angles throughout this entire thing. And it really reminded me of some of Knight's, earlier work, going all the way back to Sixth Sense, that I don't necessarily remember in the Unbreakable series. But I mean, there's one whole shot that I think half the dialogue is shooting through a wine glass. And I love some of those decisions. Now, talk a little bit about how you guys collaborate on deciding on some of those shot choices.
Yeah, well, yeah, like I was saying, like, Knight's storyboard is everything. He's had the same storyboard artist that he's used since the Sixth Sense, or before the Sixth Sense, since Wide Awake, I believe. And so he'll, and he's very much into finding a way for the camera to kind of portray the emotional POV of the character, using the camera in a way that kind of to either makes you feel uncomfortable, or makes you feel small, or makes you feel like conspiratorial, or whatever the scene may be. He tries to find a way for the angle and lensing and stuff like that. He likes kind of thinking about that and exploring those kind of ideas and ways to do that. So that's kind of his foundation for the way he approaches shooting, I think, all of his shooting. And so he kind of brought that in, and he kind of like really pushed all the other directors to kind of and so he followed style, not just to fall in like the pitfalls of coverage, and really try to push this idea of trying to figure out whose POV the scene is, and trying for the camera to relate that in whatever way. And so it was really, he's really to credit for really creating like this opportunity, and creating this environment that we could take chances, which I think, I haven't really done any TV except for this, but it seems like it's, most TV shows, they want coverage and they want safety, and they want to figure out on the editing, and in Knight, very boldly and is kind of gave us the freedom to make mistakes and reshoot if we needed to, or create an arena where we could kind of play around and not be afraid that, okay, well, we need to get every angle of every piece of dialogue from everyone's for everyone in the scene. So that was great, and we had, we had a daily screening room. So every day, because he on the films, he screens dailies, and every day at lunch, the whole crew, well, at least the department heads and Knight and the producers would all sit and watch dailies from the day before, just like in a film. And so he'd sit there with the directors, and we'd talk, and he'd be it was great experience for everyone to see what we're doing, make see we're making the same film together, and anytime, and and he would get on our case if he ever saw something that looked like coverage. if he saw two medium shots, he'd be like, "What is this, coverage?" So
that's so funny. Well, I
So
think it was,
yeah, he pushed it. Yeah.
maybe it was in one of the first episodes, first or second episode, that what you guys would call coverage was a two shot, and I think the framing is actually not even of everybody's entire head. Like I think it actually framed off the top of their head, so you're really just kind of seeing the eyes down while these two characters are having a conversation. And I think that set the tone early on that this wasn't going to be a typical TV show. I mean, do you think some of that came from the fact that this is an Apple Plus show and there is additional freedoms that come from a streaming platform, and certainly one that kind of is fairly new to the game, or do you just feel that this was Knight's style?
Yeah, honestly, again, I haven't done too much TV, so I can't speak too much to what it's like doing network TV or anything like that. But in that respect, but it's probably a little bit of both. I would be my guess. Apple is very gracious, and they kind of let us run with it, and they trusted Knight and trusted us, which was wonderful. And so they allowed that tonight. They allowed for Knight to create this environment. So yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, Ryan, as somebody who's done network television, I mean, you've done Silicon Valley for a number of seasons now. How was this experience, shooting with a team that obviously you've done more feature work with? How did it differ from your other episodic TV work?
It's just a slower pace in a good way. You really get to, find the shot that you want to do and have a little time to, we're still moving really quickly because we're, but it's not like, we have to get 8 pages done today, like on any, regular TV show that I've done. So you could take a little extra time refining a dolly move or, getting the lighting just right. And it was, really much just sort of putting the puzzle together, and not having to rush through the day was kind of nice. And single camera, Knight really likes just doing, one setup at a time. And it's probably a little old fashioned, but it works really well. And it worked for us. I mean, because the house was built, there weren't a lot of flyable walls. So trying to get $2 and 2 cameras would have been a nightmare anyway, I think, just because the sets, weren't huge and you can't move a wall, so you're stuck in the living room. But yeah, it's just a little bit slower pace, and you have a little more time to sort of refine each shot. So I think that's the best part of it, is that there's not a rush to it like some of the sitcoms and things that I've done. Everybody gets a little time to just sort of think and figure it out and do the problem solving that needs to be done to get the shot.
Yeah, I think it really comes across. I mean, honestly, it visually, and as I was kind of researching a lot of this, the reviews on the cinematography are fantastic. I mean, it really showed that the care and detail and the time was put into each and every shot, the way it was crafted. We should definitely give a little nod to our camera attendees. Mike, what'd you shoot the show on, and what were your glass choices, and how did you guys go about picking the glass?
Yeah, so we shot on the Alexa LF with the Primo 70s, which is Panavision Primo 70s. We did a test early on. We tested the LF and we tested 35. Knight and I were really pushing to shoot 35, and there was some concerns for Apple, and we ultimately chose, went with the LF, and added a little bit of live. We had the live grain, which is a grain plugin that a DP, Sunny has created. I don't know if anyone's familiar with it, but it's pretty great. He's mapped out all these the density of grain of all these film stocks, and so it's an algorithm that he's created that where the grain is responding to color and to density, and not just an overlay, essentially. So it's so that I think kind of helped to add a little bit of a texture to it, and so it was mostly all on those primes. We had some zooms, some Primo 70 zooms, and I think we rated the camera at 1280. Yeah.
So with the LF, as Ryan just mentioned, I mean, the house was built practically. I mean, that's a fairly large camera. I mean, did you guys do anything or use a different technology for any Steadicam work, or did you find that dealing with that in that house environment was challenging at all?
Yeah, I mean, there were a couple times we carried 2 LFs and then we carried 1 mini, regular
Okay.
mini, because the mini LF wasn't available at that point. And we'd use the, you know, I have an old power pod that I use with, a lot of the time with them, but then we also had like a Ronin with the mini that we would use a lot for some of the more complicated, kind of intricate moves that we did. You know, usually always on a dolly, and you know, we would just, a lot of times we just wouldn't lay any track, and we'd put the Ronin on the dolly and kind of be able to move around the floors. They're all kind of nice wood floors, so it wasn't that hard.
Yeah. I do have a question from the audience here, specifically talking about camera angles. I mean, when you're talking about different camera angles, and certainly knowing the size of that camera and the restrictions of a practical location, you know, you mentioned that you're storyboarding a lot. The question actually comes in: are those angles preconceived? I mean, are you and Knight knowing exactly what direction you're shooting, or does some of that just kind of come from the gut? You guys are in the environment, you're watching the actors do their jobs, and you're like, wow, let's maybe grab something over here. How does that process work for you?
Yeah, you know, again, like since Knight is always kind of like 98% of it, always for Knight is always boarded ahead of time and kind of worked out in his head. And then, you know, obviously he sees what actors are doing and may respond a little bit, but he very much likes to stick to, I think, what he's thought through, you know, because he takes a lot of time to do that. So for when Knight was directing, I think, yeah, mostly all of the angles are thought through. Not to say that I'm sure there's, you know, there's times when we changed it based on blocking and actors and stuff like that. And then with the rest of the directors that kind of came in, you know, again, like Knight kind of tried to push everyone to work in a similar fashion, to at least to think about it ahead of time. So like most of my weekends were spent on stage with the directors, and we walking through each scene and kind of photoboarding it and storyboarding it with a storyboard artist. And so most of it at least was worked through. And then I think obviously what the actors bring another level to it, and so we'd react to that, but at least try to the concept. You know, usually, hopefully, sometimes was kept, for the most part, was kind of kept from when we you know, started the plan. So at least that was a goal. And you know, I think, you know, it's a more than I think we achieved it more than 50% of the time.
Yeah, I agree. So let's talk a little bit about the practicality of pulling this series off. So, I mean, I think most people know that Knight loves to shoot in his hometown of Philadelphia. He's got a great facility set up there. You know, in your prior collaborations, both I think at Glass and Split, you guys were at Sun Center, which is a fairly legitimate, I mean, studio facility in Philly. They've got 2 beautiful stages. It is, as much as Philly has, it's sort of a real studio. But in this particular show, you guys were not there. You ended up going to a warehouse that you could take total and complete ownership of. I mean, Ryan, talk about what were the challenges there? I mean, you've rigged in both locations now, and you've now done series or work in both places. How was it switching to the warehouse?
The ceilings were really low. So, you know, we had to figure out how we were going to light the exterior of the house and the front of the house. And we ended up, you know, using a bunch of LiteGear stuff because of the small profile, and basically just tied frames to the top of this industrial ceiling. It was weird because while we were rigging it, if there was something in the way, we just, well, can we cut this out? Yeah. Next day it would be cut out, and we just like basically walk around with a laser pointer and pointed stuff to cut out in the ceiling to get, you know, rigging and lights and hardware and stuff where we wanted them. So that, you know, that was a little bit bizarre, but it all, you know, it all worked pretty well. So I think that was maybe one of the biggest challenges, is just how we were going to approach it, because there's no way we would in the middle to do space lights or sky panels or something like that, you know, because you'd see everything out the windows. So we just had to come up with a thin profile of how to do it. So
yeah, one of the questions that has come in from one of our attendees watching is, you know, obviously you're a 728 gaffer. How was it going into a 52 jurisdiction, and how are the crews working in that community?
It's a really tight knit community there. A lot of familiar faces. Knight likes to work with the same people over and over again, so it's a lot of the same people that have been on all his movies. And this was the third time that I'd worked there, so I had a pretty good relationship with everybody there in 52. It wasn't sort of problematic because it wasn't like I was going to New York and trying to take a job from a New York gaffer or something like that. So there's never really been any sort of union trouble going there to do that, to do any of the jobs there. Since it's become less of a film market. It used to be pretty big. I think some work went back to New York, but I think Philly's opening back up again into a film market. I think everybody was pretty busy there last year. So yeah, I mean, it's good. Everybody, there's no big rental house, so all the gear has to come in from different places. So that gets to be a little bit logistically crazy, but everybody handles it pretty well, and it's nice.
Who serviced the show for you, and out of what location?
Sinalise, and then they were shipping gear from New York, North Carolina, Pittsburgh, Los Angeles.
Yeah, everywhere.
All kinds of places. Because when we started the first season, I think it was fall of 2018. Is that right? It was super busy everywhere, and so if I needed 6 tweenies, I got 3 from New York and 3 overnighted from LA or something like that. So it was kind of crazy.
Well, it is good to see Philly, being as busy as it is, because I think while you guys were shooting, 21 Bridges was shooting in town. Then I know on the second season, which is kind of in the middle or towards the tail end of Principal, there's been, I think, 2 projects that Ben Richardson ASC has been working on in Philly as well. So it's good. I think the town can sustain, a couple projects of that size, but it's also challenging because New York's been so unbelievably busy that I think even pulling crews to come from New York down is a bit difficult. So, well, I tell you, why don't we do this? I've got some images pulled up. Why don't we take a look at some of the images? I think, there's some beautiful set pictures, Mike, that you sent over, so we can look at those and just kind of talk about some different things. And then Ryan, the BTS stuff that you brought in will kind of show our audience what working with the light tiles were, and how you guys were mixing some of the different tools. So let me just go to a screen share here, and let's see how I do this. All right, actually, I'm going to go back up to the beginning here. All right, great. Are you guys seeing that?
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So, Mike, I apologize. I kind of, went through and picked, you sent over some just amazing images, and I kind of picked some that were favorites of mine, and I think some that would pertain to the conversation.
Sure.
So if I did pick any of your favorites, by all means,
Yeah,
let
no.
I think, I love the shot because this, I think, really lends itself to that Hitchcock-esque nature, where you're seeing the reflection of the character in this. Talk a little bit about just, again, tone and camera angle here.
Yeah, I think this was from Knight's for the first pilot episode, and it was it was this small space in this closet, and the shot starts kind of going along clothes, and you still kind of see Leanne's hand kind of like touching the clothes, and kind of it wraps around almost 360 or like 270 and kind of lands somewhere in this frame here. And this way you finally kind of reveal her face in the mirror here. Which was real nice. And, I forget the reference. It was a reference from anyway, I'll think of the reference.
Like Rear Window or something.
Pearls. No, it's Pearls of Madame. I forget. If someone knows that knows where I'm going there, please type it in. But in any case, we had, so this was real simple. We had, obviously the practical that was on there, and I think it was just we had the art department create muslin ceilings that were slightly painted, so they were shootable. They were shootable when the lights are, and then I've hung light tiles above them. So we hung like light tiles. We made like light tile boxes along the whole along the whole set, all the ceilings of the set, wherever we could get muslin ceilings, non-hard ceilings. And so like Sparky and Keep Grip John kind of created these, like, divided each of the light tile, they were, I guess, what were they, Sparky? They're light tarps,
light tiles. The tarps were the big ones outside. We did
right.
all the, I think it was
Light
like
tile.
56 by 8s throughout all the ceiling, the interior.
Yeah, I've got some great pictures coming up of exactly what you're talking about, Mike, where you can see the Duvetine teasers that sectioned off, sort of each quadrant of the light tile. So we'll look at that here in just a second.
Yeah, so essentially we made cells, like we mapped the light tiles to, I think, 2 foot by 4 foot sections, and made Duvetine skirts around the 2 foot by 4 foot sections. So essentially, in a 10 by 10 or 12 by 12 room that has a muslin ceiling, we could turn on just specific sections of the ceiling, and it would play through the muslin. And then again, it was like just slightly painted. So when the light tiles are off, it's shootable. And then when they're on, you could still shoot into a corner of the room and still have these, this section of tiles on here. So so essentially, and so a lot of times we just use it as a little room tone kind of ambience that way.
Sure.
So that's kind of really all I think we did here. Sparky, chime in, please, if you remember.
Well, Ryan, let me lead you a little bit here, because I do have a question from the audience. So in this application, and as this scene comes on, the practical, what are you using for the practicals here? Is that an incandescent lamp, or is that, a bit of light ribbon in there, or, and then how did that translate through some of your other practicals within the house?
That I think was like a 212 or 213 photo flood.
Yeah, old school.
We used all regular tungsten bulbs whenever possible. If we needed extra exposure, then we'd bump up to a photo flood, specifically for a shot like this to light a face or something. But any of the practicals, I think, were probably 60 or 75 watts. And it was all, they were all dimmable. So we had that. And, every once in a while we would change out a bulb and go a little bit lower wattage or a little bit higher wattage, but all tungsten stuff, which is, again, sort of old fashioned, but it still works pretty nicely.
Oh, I love it. Well, we've got a great shot coming up from the dining room with the ring light in here. So we'll get to that. And we'll talk a bit more about some of those practicals. I do have a question, Mike, that just came in from the audience about this shot. And Tina writes, there seems to be with this an introduction that we might be seeing two different worlds. I mean, there's clearly, because this is the pilot episode, the tone of this, and you're clearly leading that this character is going to have almost two sides. Was that intentional?
Yeah, totally. I think this is and I think this is kind of all new, like a new world that Leanne's like entering at this point. Like this is kind of somewhat foreign to her, and so I think these scenes here are her kind of taking it in.
Dig it. Well, let's move on. Let's look at another. So this is also from the trailer. I love this because, again, it shows the practicality of the set. And I think, the fact that you are throughout the course of each episode and throughout the course of the series adjusting color temperature. Talk a little bit about this. I mean, how did you guys get this shot? And
well, I mean, the sets are beautiful. Name and the production designer and our set deck, Karen, just did an amazing job. So, the light just takes the light very nicely. There's all the nice textures of the wood and stuff like that reflect off of everything very nicely. I mean, this is I tried to, I think the goal we were trying not to, it takes place in Philadelphia, like we were saying, and in a brownstone, like a 4-story brownstone. And, in reality, there's not really any direct sunlight that ever penetrates into the house. So I never really was playing with any kind of direct hard sunlight, except for a couple times we did, some of the flashbacks we did, and then here and there, I think occasionally throughout the show we did a couple scenes. But so in general, it was kind of this kind of ambient, slightly cool daylight that was kind of creeping in. There's a skylight that's built on the very top, the 4th floor. And then this is kind of like the idea is that this is a light that's kind of coming down from that skylight. So it was kind of recreated again, like Sparky was saying. There was a 1st floor set, a 2nd floor set, and then a 3rd floor set, and then a basement set. And they were all I don't know. I would say I guess on built side by side, essentially.
Got it. Yeah, I think we've got some great. I think the next image might be. Well, no, this is Leanne's bedroom. I've got a couple of great stills that you sent me, Mike, from the basement wine cellar. But I love this shot because, and there's another one we're going to look at here in a bit too. The wall covering on this was, to me, the thing that really stood out. Like, what a unique and interesting choice, because you don't see anything quite this dramatic in the course of the series. How fun was that, Ryan, to play? Because you're clearly using a bit of a practical here, and as it changes, I mean, that had to be fun to be able to throw some light on and be able to kind of make some of that pop.
Yeah, it's definitely more texture just in colors and stuff because of the mural. So it was always kind of fun. And I think most of the time we just played that practical on or off, or swap to the other practical, just depending on how we were going to shoot the scene. But it's nice to have something a little bit colorful, for lack of a better descriptor, I guess, than the other parts of the house. Doesn't feel as clinical, I guess, as the house can in some places.
Sure.
So it's nice. I think we did a little bit of closet light as well at times, and just to help fill that room a little bit and give it a little life.
Well, I think from a set decorating perspective, it's very interesting as you look through, and we'll see, as we dissect a few more of these images, the house, the kitchen's extremely modern. There's very clean lines in a lot of the house, and yet we get to Leanne's room, and there is an old school tube television. So no flat screens. This I thought was an interesting way to play that. So, and there are times where she's watching the TV. So, Ryan, would you guys augment the TV light? And if you did, what kind of DIY stuff were you using to do that?
Yeah, we'd do that fairly often. LED card, light ribbon, homemade stuff, and we'd set it up wirelessly, and then we would play with faders on a DMX at the village, or at Mike's monitor, and sort of just subtly. We never really wanted to light with the television. It was all sort of just like a little subtle enhancement. So it was nothing ever too crazy, but we just play with the sliders on a DMX set.
Love it. So I'm getting some questions, and I was going to lead to this anyway. So talk a little bit about what's lighting through the windows. I mean, we're going to see here in a little bit that we've obviously got, a lot of ambient being created by the various size light tile stuff, but are you doing anything else to get that sort of nice, cool blue in coming from the window?
Yeah, I think, yes, Sparky, I don't know. I think it was probably, I don't know if this was part of the like 120K or something with the pale blue, or it might have been, or we just put the we had a strip of I don't know, Sky Panel 60s that were kind of hitting the backing.
Yeah, I think it was a combination of that. We had, it may have been 120K. The set's elevated, I think, 3 or 4 feet. Out that window is a backing, but there's also like 40 feet of muslin on a track that we could slide in and out, and we'd bounce as 120K or as many as 420Ks, depending on if it was day or night, or something like that. I don't remember exactly, but you're right, it's probably pale blue 20K bounce. It might be the sky panels hitting the backing, some combination of that for sure going on out there. But that was sort of the main approach out there, is that when the backing was in and we would look, we would, sneak in bounces where we could. And then when we weren't looking at the windows, we'd bring in the muslin and just use that as the main source. And again, a little bit of room tone top light from the tiles above I think it was like a 8 by 10 opening in this bedroom. So yeah, that's just, Mikey loves soft lights. We try and bounce it whenever we can.
No, I love it. And we've got a great shot that you sent me where you're really seeing those 20Ks bounced into that muslin or to the backing here. And I'll show that in a bit. There's just a couple of questions coming in from our audience on the practical. Are you augmenting that practical with anything up high, like a small, like 300 or 650, or is that just the photo flood?
No, that's just, I think that is probably a 60 or 75 watt globe. That's just that. It's the lampshade, I think, was glass and sort of had openings. It's like glass beads maybe or something.
Got it.
So you get a little extra pop with that. And then there was probably a tweeny bounce or something in the closet just to help to bring up bring up that area a little bit,
there.
sort of feel. But yeah, that's just, there's nothing hitting that light. That's just doing its work by itself.
Great. And then just before we leave this this particular picture, Mike, are you seeing the ceiling in this frame? Is that what you're talking about with that painted muslin? It just happens to be off in this particular shot?
Yeah, so like in this room in particular, there was kind of a kind of created like a there was hard ceilings around the perimeter, about like 4-foot perimeter of hard ceilings, and then in the center of the set was maybe like a 6x10 opening of soft ceiling. And so we had we had a light tile above that, which would give us a little bit of just a little bit of room tone here and there, or sometimes play, if for sometimes we had like 360 shots, something like that, it would play a little bit stronger just to help
dig it. All right, well, let's go on to the next one here. So here we're talking about, and what I'm gonna do is I'll hit this one, and then I'm gonna go to the next one as well, because this is a great interaction between the two characters here in the basement wine cellar. So I love the silhouette and profile, and Ryan, you can probably speak to that that single lamp source back there, and then we'll just go to the other shot here where they're a little bit closer to the cellar. So talk a little bit about lighting the cellar. Obviously, it's a dark environment. There's some great little nuanced textures on the wall with the wine bottles and stuff. This had to be fun for you guys to light.
It's easy. Just turn on, it's like one of those sets that you turn on like a couple of bare globes, and it just looks beautiful because of all the texture that is there, and the tones and the colors and stuff like that, and just takes the light really well and lets the characters pop. And so yeah, I mean, it was it was really beautiful set. So yeah, I think we had the ceiling, the Naaman gave us, there was 2x6s that were running kind of along the ceiling, so we'd lift up, and then there was a there was a wood on top of that, so we'd lift up the wood, and then we'd maybe do a couple 4x8 bounces with like Licos over the wall into the 4x8 bounces, just to help carry what the practicals were doing and kind of extend that a little bit, kind of wrap that around a little bit. That was kind of the basic approach. And then I know Sparky, we had, what else we'd hide in this set? We'd hide some small bounces, in coverage and stuff like that.
Yeah, any number of small bounces, or sneak in a light mat one somewhere, or it's just filling in little nooks and crannies sometimes. But yeah, we turn on most of the practicals in there, and you're 90% lit in that particular set, because it does just have this great feel with all these natural practicals. So it was pretty easy.
This for sure, this had such, for me, a reminiscence to Road to Perdition. There's that great scene that Connie Hall shot in the catacombs where the two characters are kind of in this exact same position, sort of face to face, and his use of just bare light bulbs as the practical source was great. And it so reminded me of this every time that they were down in the cellar, in this position. So it's great work.
Cool. Well, thanks.
All right, so I brought this picture up because I think the one that I have right after this, Mike, shows how you guys were doing the teasers with the light tiles. But one of the things I noticed a lot is you guys would play different color temperatures with the kitchen and the dining room environments, and it often seemed like the kitchen was quite cold. But here, I think this is just a great shot. And then let me go to here, because now we're going to talk a little bit about how you guys were able to take these 2x8s and then kind of tease them off, and how it plays back on this particular shot here.
Yeah, so like in this particular shot, it might have been like like another ring light or something like that, or a batten strip with a covered wagon kind of idea for lighting her. But yeah, if you go back to the other picture, basically that other picture was essentially, we had that around the whole set, like all the hallways, all the main living room area. And they were really essential in the hallways, especially because we could get just a little ambience, into those tight corridors in a very quick, very, very easily. And then we could always play with the color temperature of the ambient. Sometimes I don't know. I think we play. I don't know, Sparky. probably remember better than I do, was that it felt like the ambience maybe was a little bit cooler than we were playing some of the tungsten units or something like that. But
Yeah, I think for the daylight sort of ambient feel, I think it was like 48 or 5,000 degrees, just to give a, just take the edge off, or something like this. If we had them
Sure.
on, there were a couple hanging probably right above the kitchen island. They would have been.
oh yes, yes,
I
sorry.
think in nighttime mode is always full warm, just because that's, we're mixing with tungsten units and stuff, and they mesh well together. So yeah, those were basically the two main color temperatures I think we used. We fiddle with them a little bit here and there as needed, but primarily I think it was full warm, and then for daylight stuff around 5,000, maybe a little slightly cooler, but not full daylight.
Sure. And I think you can really see that because as it's bouncing off the bar right there, you can see that change in CCT right there. All right, I'm
Yeah.
gonna kind of move through to the next slide. So what I'm leading you here, so this obviously is an exterior from the practical location. Similarly here, so you can kind of get a feel for what this street of brownstones looks like. There's a great shot. I really enjoy this shot of Rupert Grint. And I think the one thing, just to kind of move off of the cinematography of this for a while, the whole dialogue where he's on the phone here while the car is backing itself up, and he actually admits that, I thought was hysterical. But I love this shot where you've got clearly something kind of giving him a bit of sidelight while the street's kind of still hot. How many different kind of fixtures, Ryan, do you think you have going on in this scene right here?
I'm not sure. It's probably some LED ribbon or a light mat one or something inside the car. We had on the city block that we shot on, I think we almost always had 4 condors with 20Ks for backlights and stuff. So you can definitely see the 20K there. There's probably, I don't know, another bounce somewhere off right side of frame, and maybe something edging the back window. I don't know, 4 or 5 maybe.
I mean, and you obviously had to deal with whatever practically was already on the street, right? So were you kind of playing to whatever the street lighting was and playing to some of the actual practicals that were built onto the brownstones?
Yeah, absolutely. We'd change light bulbs as we were given permission by the people who's lived on the street. We took a lot of the street lights away along the street and just would play them off. I think we even had one right in front of the house removed by the city. And then the ones on the next block, both north and south of this, we would gel, so they had a little bit warmer feel to them. But I think I think on this street there was maybe one in a tree that was the only one that ever played on. But yeah, everything else we just sort of what it is what we get. Sometimes we were able to get into people's apartments and play something if we were looking specifically at the front of the house and we needed to get a gem ball there or something in a sky panel there or something like that. It sort of changed each time we were there because it just depended on who wanted to work with us. Again, we weren't there on location very often, but it just depending on the blocking and what we were seeing, it sort of just changed. So there wasn't really a go-to, oh, we're always going to put a light in this person's house, or we're always going to put a light in that person's house.
Got it. So a question just came in from our audience here. I mean, as far as how you and Mike both work practically on set, are you lighting often from a monitor, or are you lighting from a meter, or what's your process?
Little bit of both. Definitely more of a monitor for sure, but we'll both randomly take meter readings just as a reference to see how things are falling into place. I definitely find that I'm using a color meter way more than an incident meter these days. But yeah, Mike's got I think it's a 22 or 25-inch screen at where his specific monitor that's sort of separate from producer monitors or something like that. It's always really well calibrated, so we're refining everything from there, but we're not reading every single light with a meter.
Yeah, I've kind of kind of fell away from really using the meter too much, just since I've been kind of creating. I usually try to create like a LUT in prep that's very close to the final look of the show, and then that gets put in the cameras, and then we're seeing that on set. So I feel, and then I usually try to keep the monitors stand calibration with them. So and especially since it's for TV, then the result is TV and not theatrical, and so it's a little closer. So I feel, I always felt kind of very safe, kind of lighting to the monitor. Occasionally if it's very dark scene, I don't know, I might get a little scared and and take a reading or open up or something like that a little bit.
Yeah, dig it. So let's get into a little bit of the behind the scenes stuff. So I think I've got a few of these queued up here, but I really want to show primarily, I mean, it's great shots of the light tiles and, a shameless plug, albeit, but I think it's interesting to look at how practically the set was truly built, to the extent that you guys lit the street. I mean, this is obviously the front of the street, front of the brownstones. There's another shot of that here. And then as we go through, you can really see, that this is a practical facade on stage that actually worked on into the house. And then this is kind of what I can go back to these, but I wanted to get to the end result. So here's the end result with actual practical cars on set as well. So, I mean, this had to be a very cool and interesting thing to do. And I think the one thing I love here is you've got, all the light tiles playing as this wonderful kind of soft overhead ambience. And then you've got these 20Ks, these old school workhorses bouncing into the muslin on the end of stage. So talk a little bit about, how it was being able to kind of shoot exterior like this on stage.
I mean, it was difficult. It gets difficult, but the light, the light tiles honestly made it possible. Again, like Sparky was saying, like the profile of the stage of the warehouse was really tight, and the windows are large. They're pretty high, and the set's all elevated at least 2 feet on this set. So you start to see the ceiling pretty quickly. So if there's anything less than the light tiles, we would have been constrained in the shot design a little bit more from the inside of the house, and then from the outside, obviously, just creating as much sky as possible. And such a thin profile was great. And as you can see here, there's also rain. They rigged this whole street for rain, so being able to hang it above those heads, was very helpful. And then we added this flyable gray grids. And it's super difficult once you start adding cars. There's so much reflection. The cars pick up all the reflections, so it starts to give it away in the reflections of the cars very, very fast. But it holds up all right. You're just looking at the brownstone, somewhat decently.
Yeah. So Ryan, in this particular image, it looks like you've got some overhung fixtures on that truss. What are those, and what were they being used for?
Those are I don't know, like 12 tweenies, I think, on this truss. The backing, we use that to like the night backing. So basically, when we were inside the house looking out, we would bring in the backing, which is a Roscoe soft drop, I think. They're their newest.
Yeah.
Newest. I think it's a soft drop.
Yeah.
So that would roll in. We'd drop that truss down, and then sort of hit different windows and places with the tweenies and spot them in, flood them in, just to give different textures and stuff to the backing when we saw it. But a lot of times, I think the second half of the season, the facade across the street had been built, so we lit that up and used that for a bit more of a real backing in depth, as opposed to putting in the backing. I think we used the backing more for the second story, which is the nursery, which in this picture right here is just sort of the windows right above the roof of the SUV, sort of by where the tree is, because that's supposed to be on the second floor. So the backing primarily played, I think, more for that by the end of the season. It was one of those things where we had the advantage to use the real facade that was built across the street as our backing for the living room.
Got it. And then I think I just had a question from the audience. Why the gray grid material? What was the choice there?
Well, only since it was my thinking was that since it's you know, I don't know, 14 feet from where the subjects were or less to the top of the source, you know, having a white diffusion would be more specular, and this would at least kind of reduce the specularity of the diffusion on their faces and stuff, and feel a little more, hopefully feel a little more, I guess, real, and not so, you know, studio lighting, you know, 40 feet of diffusion, you know, of 10 feet above the actors, kind of a thing.
Yeah, no, I mean, it certainly worked. All right, let's kind of keep going here. So I brought this scene up because this is the actual patio or their backyard. And I think it's a great use of, you know, you've got a lot of practicals in play here, but I also think if I go to the next slide, isn't this the overhead for the patio as well, Ryan?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because yep. That's the overhead of the full backyard. So, you know, the two sets are built side by side. This particular angle is definitely right outside the kitchen where they were sitting.
Yeah, and so I think it's great. I mean, you can really see how the nice soft ambience plays along with the practicals. But what I like about this picture too is, I mean, you've literally got an existing HVAC duct going right between your light tiles. So I mean, it really showed the constraints that you guys were under in trying
Yeah.
to rig any type of lighting in this warehouse.
Yeah. Yeah, there are places where we would cut that out further into the set where we needed to get stuff. Here it wasn't too, we sort of just rigged around it, but as we got into the interior of the house is where we had to cut a bunch of stuff out and some out front from that previous picture with the diffusion of the street. There's a bunch of stuff that we just, can we cut this? Yeah, okay, great, cut it.
Love it. I mean, kudos to your rigging key because I think you must have put them through a lot of paces on this one. So
yeah.
Oh, I didn't mean to cut you off there, Ryan.
Oh no, that's okay. Lost my thought. Go ahead.
Well, one of the things I brought this picture in because food plays an enormous part of this entire series, and I noticed that Apple TV even has a whole like behind the scenes thing on just shooting the food. I mean, Mike, I don't really get the impression you shoot a lot of food commercials. So how was it dealing with all the tones and textures with the food?
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of fun, honestly. I mean, there was we had a great chef consultant who was there full time, working with Toby, you know, just on his cooking skills, and also he would also be making all of these dishes that you see on screen, and so we kind of had this motif of doing these kind of overhead tableaus of each of the dishes that kind of got served throughout the show, and which you know, which was kind of which was nice. I don't know. I think there's a whole theme of the food kind of relates to I think, you know, what they're going through. At least in my mind, it did. So yeah.
No, for sure. I mean, and it clearly throughout each episode, there's always either a key dish or there's something in particular that, you know, really does kind of set the mood for that particular episode, and that certainly culminates with the baptismal party, let's just say. So I love this particular shot because here again, I think you can see the ceiling, so you can kind of see, you know, how that painted muslin is shootable. And I won't spend a lot of time on this because I wanted to get to this one, which is the ring light of all ring lights. Ryan, talk a little bit about this. What's the motivation here?
Just trying to come up with a natural feel for the practical that's already there. So, you know, I think that this was maybe the first version of it. We ended up putting another 1 or 2 rings on the inside that we could adjust the intensities for and sort of, you know, with the teaser allow how the light was going to fall. But it was just sort of an idea that Mike had, and we just sort of ran with it to give it just sort of a natural, soft feel to the dining room, without necessarily having to use the practical as the key light or something. You know, there's any number of ways to do it. We just sort of decided that this ring light might be nice and have the individual control of the 3 rings, so you could, you know, sort of change the exposure a little bit and where it falls in the room.
So from I'm sorry, just real quick, from a practical perspective, I mean, there's obviously times when you're going to see that. So how did you guys, was there like some quick releases, or was there some stuff up above that allowed you to kind of put this up above the chandelier and take it down for certain shots?
Yeah, I think we just put some 2x4 or something up there, and we could just screw right into the ceiling pretty much and secure it. And then we had a couple little holes to run in some zip stinger to control everything. But yeah, it was pretty easy to take in and out. And I think the rings too are built in two shapes, two U shapes, so it's easy. You can take one off if we wanted, or put them together to make the ring. So that was easier. We didn't have to try and fight getting it down around the practical. You could just take it apart in two pieces.
Very, very cool. So, I've just got some other just things that jumped out at me here. Mike, I love this shot too here because it's, you can see Rupert is kind of close out of focus in the front, but you're almost seeing both of the other two actresses towards the black. Did you guys do any split diopter type stuff throughout the season at all?
We did, yeah, we did split diopter a few times. Yeah, not here, but I kind of like it. It's kind of a fun, useful tool, I think sometimes. And so yeah, a few of the episodes had a shot here or there.
I think it kind of leads to the mysterious part of the series. And again, another just great shot of mixed color temperatures here. He's obviously quite cold. Ryan, what did you have in the down cans over the bar in the kitchen?
I don't remember what wattage, but just a regular spot globe of some sort, regular tungsten, and then the range underneath or above the stove, the hood there, a couple of batten strips with 25-watt household practicals.
Really interesting. What was the choice there? Because I would have thought that'd be a great place to snap in like a tube of some sort, or something like that.
Ask the other guy. He likes so let's put a batten strip in here. Okay, let's get some magnets. Perfect.
Yeah, I don't know, with the ring lights and with the batten strips and something, I don't know, I kind of like, I don't know, I always kind of like, there's something less controllable, I guess, about, well, obviously just the tungsten globe itself is really pretty, I think, and then I don't know, there's something, I kind of like the idea of it being somewhat uncontrollable source, and rather than things with egg crates and things with where things are super focused. To me, it kind of, I don't know, and I don't know if any of that makes sense, but
no, I think it makes perfect sense.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
You're an artist. You have a certain arsenal of tools that you enjoy using, and I mean, I think the one thing I'll point out is we'll get to it. I think. In the past that Ryan, you carry a strong complement of traditional incandescents. I mean, a traditional tungsten head card. So I think it's great that you guys are able to mix these technologies and still get these amazing results.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know how you feel, Sparky, but me, I think the LED technology is, obviously invaluable in so many different ways, and again, the hallways stuff and the stuff above and profiles, and just especially with all the LiteGear stuff, the modularity of it is just something you can't do with incandescents. But yeah, I don't usually try to run towards a sky panel first. Most of the time, I mean, they're amazing. You can do any colors with them, but most of the time, I feel like, I'm either doing some version of tungsten or some version of daylight, and I kind of always enjoy just large Fresnels bouncing into large white kind of sources kind of things, and so yeah, I guess, yeah. I don't know, Sparky, if you have any thoughts there.
No, not really. I mean, it's just it's a nice quality of source. Just doing a big bounce a lot of times. I mean, there are plenty of times that we would light stuff with sky panel here or there or something like that. But
yeah,
we've got the space. It's just like, okay, let's really fill this up with good quality light. I don't think it's oh, we only are going to use 20Ks. I mean, if we couldn't have gotten any 20Ks, we would have done something else. But we just sort of have always liked that idea tungsten light. So it's pretty cheap too. So producers are producers are okay with getting an extra 20K here or there.
That's so funny because that's absolutely true. I mean, when it comes to picking your arsenal, there nowadays a lot of that stuff, the studios and the rental companies are willing to dang near give it away. So I really like this image because I think this has got some rain playing off the window. It's got some almost sodium vapor coming in from the street light, and then with the window shears and the crib kind of creating those shadows. I really like this shot. And I don't know, Mike, if there was anything that jumped out on this one to you when you guys were shooting.
Yeah. I mean, we kind of the art department gave us some great window treatment with a lot of texture to it to create kind of these patterns as much as we can for most of the night stuff. And so we would play those patterns. I think more specifically in this room, especially and I think it was just real simple, just the 3 tweenies, 1 tweenie per window kind of a thing, and maybe a little bit of a small bounce light to supplement elsewhere, but yeah, it's pretty low light levels, I think, for this.
No, it looks it. I mean, it's very moody and fun. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that I can only imagine for you guys on the day of is fun to light and fun to shoot. This one I wanted to bring out because we talked a little bit about not only this practical and this sort of Tiffany chandelier here, this lampshade, but I find that the framing here, and I know one of the earlier attendees was talking about angles. Obviously, you're trying to focus on the fact that she's a very devout religious person, but if you look at the mural behind her, there's not only somebody praying in the mural as well. I thought that was an amazing stylistic choice right there.
Yeah. This room is particularly was just super gorgeous and super the tones and stuff like that that were chosen were fantastic. And she was always in the right wardrobe. We always tried to not have anything too dark or too white, except for the kitchen. The kitchen is pretty stark.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
And there it is. Good example of the kitchen. I think this is really the 2 images here are great juxtapositions about the tones throughout the different rooms in this house. And I think the fact that you mentioned the kitchen, because you got some great under counter lighting there to the left. The fridge is certainly got some great practical stuff in it, and then you've got these light bulbs that are kind of bouncing off that dark, clinical, almost medical island right there. So yeah, just great stuff. What I'd like to do now at this point, boys, I'm going to kind of just go through a few of these images. If there's anything that jumps out at you want to talk about, we should probably work towards wrapping up and seeing if there's any other questions from the audience, because I've kept you now almost an hour and a half. So, but there's just some great stuff here. Another great shot, again, using that ambient. And now that we've seen kind of what the outside of that nursery looked like from what we'd call, quote, the street level where that was located, you can see you guys. Great use of color, great use of sources.
The nursery was the room that I think we played with the most in terms of just trying different stuff out. I think we played around with different night looks and day looks and just different ways of how to make the nursery look a little more interesting than I think some of the other rooms. So there's not a standard look for the nursery like a couple of the other rooms. We kind of opened it up and played with different stuff a little bit more here.
I think you can really see that. In fact, I think I've got the next more marquee image kind of queued up here, which is, the nursery really, is in a lot of ways, it's the defining room of this entire series, because, obviously the Jericho, the character, the baby is kind of the main character that puts this whole thing in motion. So you guys end up shooting this room a lot, and the room changes. It plays very differently throughout each episode, or within each episode throughout the whole series. I do have a question from somebody in the audience. Any L series Fresnels? Did you guys use any other LED Fresnel or hard sources?
We had a couple of the Mole Richardson Tweenie version. Sure. That we used a little bit. So we had a couple of those. We had some L7s for sure. We're both big fans of those lights. I think that's it in terms of Fresnel LED stuff. We definitely had some sky panel 60s, some sky panel 30s, you know, battery power to could lay on the floor or something like that is needed. But I think that was, you know, a couple of light panels, Astra 1x1s, more, you know, and then I have my little LED cart that's got a mix of LiteGear stuff, different size light mats. We'd screw into a wall or ceiling or something like that if we need a little extra top light or a little accent light or something like that. So, you know, definitely a wide range of lighting tools.
No, it's great, and it certainly gives you this. I think this set gave you an opportunity to do this. I think this was. I wanted to kind of start as I wrap up this up. I thought this was cool to throw this image in because it's almost the reverse of that image in the beginning of this keynote, where you've got Mr. Turner looking up into the staircase. Now you've got her looking down, so you can see how the skylight practically played there. Mike, is that even a skylight, or is that just a green screen?
Well, yeah, both. It's actually it's actually like so we have you know, this exists on a couple different, like 2 different sets that are kind of combined together to create the reality of what the house would be. So practically, like where she's standing is the first floor set, and then they've added, I think, and then the staircase behind her is somewhat built, or actually fully built, actually, and then the skylight is from the fourth floor set where Leanne's room is. So out in the kind of yeah. So yeah. So this was a well, it wasn't even green screen. It was just like a Luma key essentially, because we just covered the we actually played the fixture from where it would be in reality, and then they just so it was just essentially like a Luma key, which they did instead of a green screen and then trying to find a way to light it cheat the lighting in a way that wasn't real.
Got it. Dig it. I've got a question, Ryan, for
Yep.
you. The attendee asks, what are you using for DMX control? I'm assuming you guys had a board up, but you also use Luminaire or Blackout or Control One or any type of those sort of handheld DMX control devices?
Yeah, we definitely had a full board. I don't remember. I think it was an Ion. I can't remember exactly what the board was that Bananas used. But
sorry?
for any like what?
Bananas?
Yeah, Bananas. What the affiliate board operator, Steve Morgan. For any of the little TV gags or something like that, it would be wireless to the DM exit, 12-channel DM exit, and just play with that. So yeah, just those 2 things. We didn't really, you know, most everything was connected to the board, so it was really just doing small little stuff that we needed to do. I think before we got everything situated in the refrigerators, there's LED strips in there. Before that was connected to the board, I think we did that with the DM exit maybe, or we tried, I don't remember exactly, but it's either DM exit or the full board.
Yeah, I mean, I love that little 12-channel DMX hit, you know, with a wireless DMX module and a battery on that thing. I mean, it really allows you to do a fair amount of stuff before getting into, you know, more sophisticated digital controllers. So very cool. And then this is great because, you know, this is, I really like this scene because, you know, when she's so frantically trying to get the car alarm to stop, but clearly this is the stage shot and you're utilizing a lot of that ambience from that original street shot. I just think this is an interesting shot. So.
Well, thanks.
And
Mike,
then, sorry, Mike, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
I was gonna say, and then this is why I have ready to close on. So this is, to me, that penultimate shot of, you know, the baby on the changing table, you know, great lines, you know, great shafts of light coming in here. Mike, how'd you get the shot? Was this off of an old ladder pod, or what are you guys doing to get this?
You know, we carried an aero jib, which is like, you know, a small, compact, maybe 8-foot, 10-foot jib arm. And so we do a lot of, you know, we use that a fair amount throughout the show. So that I think that was off of this, I think. And then I think the sunlight, you know, this is one of the rare times we actually had. Well, this is also a flashback, so we played some direct sunlight here. I think it was just a, you know, 20K. We spotted in just playing with the edge of the beam or something like that, Sparky, I think.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Oh, Fantastic. Well, gentlemen, I have kept you absolutely long enough. That's an hour and a half. I absolutely appreciate your time. Anything you guys want to say in closing?
No, thank you guys. And honestly, like, you know, you know, when we walked into the warehouse and stuff like that, you know, the light tiles, we knew the light tiles things were going to be completely necessary. And so it was a huge, you know, between that, I was really happy between the muslin ceiling rig that Sparky and John created, and then all the light tiles outside for the exterior were a huge help, honestly.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, you guys have been such a pleasure to work with over the years, and you know, I think the series absolutely looks fantastic. I think that you know, whether I know Ryan, you're not gaffing the second season, but the look is carrying on. I mean, they basically re-rigged exactly what you guys did on the first season, and then that's going to continue on through this next season, and hopefully for many seasons to come. So I certainly appreciate the patronage and, you know, the collaboration that we've been able to put together on this series, and I look forward to whatever you guys have coming up next.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Good. Well, be well. Thank you guys so much for your time. I think we're going to close with showing the trailer again for those that didn't get a chance to see it. And I think the only thing I've got to say after this is next week we're going to be continuing the LiteGear Lives. Technically, we should be a little bit more proficient than we were today, but I appreciate everybody hanging in there. Next week, we're going to be sitting down with Eric Messerschmidt, ASC, and Danny Gonzalez, 728 Gaffer, and going through the first couple of seasons of Mindhunter. And then we'll be posting up additional LiteGear Lives as we get on into the rest of our stay-at-home situation. So again, Mike, Ryan, thank you both so much for taking this much time out of your day, and stay safe, stay healthy, take care of your families, and we'll talk when this is all said and done.
Of course.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, anytime. Talk to you soon.
All right, guys, be well.
All right, bye.